So in this connection now, let me describe my concerns as a pastor, as a psychologist, and as a youth researcher. And I'd like to just touch some of the things that concern me a great deal. First of all, my concern as a pastor. I've gained an appreciation for the feelings of homosexuals, few of whom initially wanted this orientation. Their discovery that they might be homosexual brought feelings of dismay, fear, and not a little anguish. To this discovery came the added pain, at least for some, of being ill-treated or outrightly condemned by misinformed people. Especially painful for young adolescents has been the task of telling their parents they are homosexuals. And you can understand the pain for parents in hearing this. I can understand why so many homosexuals desperately want to establish their orientation as being as normal as left-handedness. I can also understand why they want their orientation to be established on a par with that of heterosexuals. As it is now, their orientation cuts them off from many aspects of life that heterosexuals enjoy. We need to be sensitive to their feelings. At the same time, I have a new appreciation for the important role of the church, the faith community. Her mission is twofold: to make disciples of all nations and to love one another as Christ has loved us. But stated another way, the mission of the church is to welcome everyone in the name of Christ and to transform lives in the name of Christ. Transformation is at the heart of the church's redeeming message. The Apostle Paul writes, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may prove what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." There is enough evidence of the destructive forces within homosexuality to make the idea of transformation an attractive promise. The gospel announces that there is deliverance and transformation for those willing to receive it. Reorientation can occur through competent therapy and the ministry of the word. That is, if one wishes to change. The Apostle Paul had this clearly in mind when he said, quote, "By this Jesus, everyone who believes is set free from all those sins from which you could not be freed by the law of Moses." I believe that the debate that is now energizing the church can be a good thing, forcing us to rethink our ministry with those who feel like strangers at the gate, with those who are struggling with sexual drives, with those who are wounded and deeply troubled. I believe that we as a church can retain our scriptural position and yet be a welcoming, transforming church. The solution lies in being a loving church that does not shun those who are satisfied with their orientation, while at the same time developing compassionate ministries for those who are dissatisfied. Such ministries are not only possible, but can be effective while remaining true to the authority of Scripture. Consider the authoritative rule of Scripture. That, of course, is the sticking point in the whole debate. It is generally conceded that there is no precedence in Holy Scripture, Lutheran confessions, or Christian tradition for the blessing of any sexual act outside the covenant of marriage. If one twists Scripture to teach otherwise, it can become false teaching. Now, a group known as the Great Lakes Confessional Lutherans identify the crux of the matter, or the debate, now facing the church in a paper which they have written. The statement which they have reads, "What is being debated within the church is not whether two people of the same sex can enter into a committed union, but whether the church can provide a public blessing of that union. What is at stake is not individual conscience, but the church's submission to the authority of Holy Scripture and the faithfulness of its public witness and teaching." And the paper further notes, "There are all kinds of persons of heterosexual orientation who for numerous and various reasons do not and will not have the opportunity for marriage. Yet the church has not created special rites of blessing for the sexual relationships of these people." See, you can tell I'm trying to keep my speech down to 45 minutes here. I'm coming down. Now, consider the witness of ex-gays. A voice seldom heard within the church is that of homosexuals who return to heterosexuality. These people, as a result of their struggle with this developmental disorder, are able to identify what an effective ministry to homosexuals should include. I listened for 2.5 hours one night as 8 ex-gays, 4 men and 4 women, told their highly personal stories, their pain, their struggles, their release, and their joy over the new life given them through the power of Christ's redemption. They reflected a keen awareness of the factors which had contributed to their same-sex attraction, the roots that had fostered and nurtured their erotic desires. One spoke of having been sexually abused by family members during her early years, 8 to 12. Another spoke of his inadequacies as a boy, unathletic and homely. He was teased and taunted at school until one day at a gay bar he discovered that he was handsome, attractive, and desirable to the men there. A third told of a divorce that fractured his home and how he as a boy tried to be the support his mother needed. 2 contributors to his condition of homosexuality were his preoccupation with pornography and his unnatural attachment to his mother. A fourth described a loveless home where the father was gone and the mother never once hugged her except one time when, as a parent, she had lost a child. I believe our denomination should invest funds in determining which of the many methods of orientation are the most effective. Then it should establish a network of people trained to provide this reorientation therapy. Funds and support groups are also needed to help these people through the required 3 years or more of therapy. The overwhelming conclusion to which one is led is not new. The Holy Scripture, inspired by God, presents the proper guide for living. The sexual boundaries which it identifies have been established in the best interests of individuals, families, and society. There is a unique wisdom reflected in God's holy writ that goes beyond human wisdom. We do well to make our decisions based on the authority of Scripture. Now, a bit about my concerns as a psychologist. I have a concern over people's misunderstanding of what research has established, and I'm concerned over the intolerance and the resistance given advocates of reorientation. There's a widespread misunderstanding that currently exists in the church with respect to the findings of scientific research. People are conducting adult forums on homosexuality in our churches and making claims that are false. They are insisting that scientific research has established these 3 assumptions. One is born a homosexual, it cannot be altered, and its behavior is normal and healthy. What these forum leaders and the hearers do not realize is that these 3 assumptions have not been established as fact. They are not true. They are no more than unproven hypotheses. Now, some will insist that studies do exist which prove that man is born homosexual and has no choice in the matter. And the studies that they may identify, among many others, but these are the principal ones, are the ones by Simon LeVay, by Dean Hammer, and by J.M. Bailey. Though other studies might be mentioned, these are the authors primarily responsible for the popular and politicized impression that being homosexual is something that cannot be helped. Now, it should be noted that all 3 of these men have acknowledged in their later writings that their studies do not establish what they had hoped to prove. Now, though these assumptions lack scientific evidence as to the truth, they're rapidly gaining acceptance, and understandably so. They provide a satisfying explanation for parents who are troubled over the fact their son or daughter is gay or lesbian. They also supply a rationale to church people who want to believe that a committed relationship between gays can be God-pleasing. And they satisfy the probing mind of the academic, who is strongly oriented to such American values as tolerance, combating discrimination, and working to lessen the moral boundaries.